Господине Вајц, ви благодарам за ова интервју. Денеска го презентиравте новиот годишен нацрт-извештај за Македонија. Со оглед на турбуленциите минатата година, кои се вашите очекувања за предстојните преговори со известувачите во сенка за конечната верзија на извештајот?
Well, my goal is to present a well-balanced report, and this is just the start of the negotiations. So in the future weeks, we will see the amendments of the colleagues, and there will be an active cooperation with all shadows and members that are pro-European and pro-democratic. So I expect constructive negotiations based on the facts that we see happening in North Macedonia and based on also the findings of myself and the Commission. So the aim is to present a well-balanced report, and I don't expect too much troubles ahead.
Што велат роковите? Каква е временската рамка?
We are now it's presented. Now members have the possibility to come up with amendments, so with their proposals, how to change the text. Then we move into negotiations. The final report shall be presented in the Foreign Policy Committee end of May, and we're expecting to vote on it in plenary in June. So before summer, we should have once again a report on the progress of North Macedonia on its path to European Union.
Минатата година се сеќававме, се соочивте со критики за она што некои го опиша како ваши промакедонски ставови. Како би ги дефинирале вашите сегашни односи со бугарските европратеници?
I cannot generalize here. I work with all Bulgarian MEPs that are pro-European and pro-democratic, and that I face criticism once in a while for this is part of the political scene, but I'm confident and positive that we will find good solutions and again come up with a well-balanced report that is respecting all the aspects that need to be respected.
Меѓу известувачите во сенка има и бугарски европратеници. Какво е вашето досегашно лично искуство со нив?
Well, different members of European Parliament come from different political sides and have different political affiliations, and in this regard, they also have different political opinions. And as all the members here in the European Parliament, they find ways to express them. But yeah, it's a mixed picture, but it's always a mixed picture. It's not so much related on where MEPs come from. And again, there's a big majority, and I will again build and invest into a big pro-democratic majority here in the House. And this is what is important for me. So I want to reach a maximum number of votes also in plenary, because I think we should send a very strong signal also to the government of North Macedonia that European Parliament stands with North Macedonia, that European Parliament is in full support of membership of North Macedonia into the European Union. And if this is not satisfying 100% of my colleagues, well, this is how politics looks like in a parliament.
Потребата од уставни измени за вклучување на бугарската етничка заедница се очекува повторно да биде спомената во овогодишниот конечен извештај како услов за отворање на преговарачките кластери. По вашата неодамнешна посета на Скопје, дали сметате дека земјата е поблиску или подалеку од уставни промени?
Well, these constitutional changes are a requirement to effectively start EU negotiations, accession negotiations, and questions of protections of minorities. This is a European issue, and this is not a speciality for the one or the other ethnical group or community. This is a general request and actually a general condition for countries that want to join European Union, and also for countries that are members of European Union today. So this will be in the report once again. It is an important step forward, so we can finally really start negotiations on the accession, which are long overdue. And I mean, it's more than 20 years now that North Macedonia has applied for EU membership, and I also have to admit that I think also in the past, the way European Union Union did set their priorities was not so much always only in the favor of accession process of the whole region, I must say. But things have changed here, so there's a real window of opportunity, not just for North Macedonia, but for the whole region to finalize negotiations. And also, it is important that the government moves on reforms now that we have a year where we see no elections upcoming. So this is a year to deliver on reforms, not just on the constitutional amendment, also the so-called reform agenda, growth pact is an important issue. There are still reforms needed, and if they are not in place until June, the country might lose 47 million euros of budget support coming from the European Union. I would strongly regret this because it's important that European Union supports the countries of the region and North Macedonia also with financial means.
Ја спомнав вашата последна посета на Скопје. Дали слушнавте нешто поразлично во врска со уставните измени од представниците на власта?
Yes, indeed. It is an important topic. I had talks with the different ministers, also with the prime minister. There's an awareness that this is a general issue for the European Union that's called minority protection and the right for self-identification and the right for cultural expression. And this accounts for all groups and in all the countries. And I see a readiness to engage also further in diplomatic talks, maybe small steps of building trust again between the countries. There's a lot of constructive forces also on both sides, and I hope that constructive forces prevail because at the end of the day, we're neighbors, we have a common interest, we have common security needs, we want to build an economic area that is prosperous. So we have a lot of interests in common, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, the whole region, also the European Union. So I see constructive forces trying to find ways to move on out of a situation that has been very heated in the last years. And I very much regret that because at the end of the day, today in this geopolitical situation that we're in, I think all Europeans have to understand either we stick together, either we work together closely with mutual respect with each other, or we're going to be sidelined in this new world that we see today. And I think I'm optimistic that the constructive forces on both sides will find ways to move on.
Каков е вашиот став за барањата што доаѓаат од владата на Северна Македонија за гаранции дека нема да има нови вета поврзани со идентитетски или историски прашања за време на пристапните преговори, како и за спроведување на некои пресуди од Европскиот суд за човекови права од Страсбур, кои се однесуваат на правото на здружување на македонците во Бугарија?
Well, the right of assembly of Macedonians in Bulgaria needs to be fulfilled anyhow. I think this should not be linked to any other questions, as this is the right of every community or ethnic minority to form associations and to express their cultural identity. And so this is a requirement that is upheld also by us in the European Parliament towards Bulgaria to implement the court rulings. And in this regard, I would say, I think, once again, it's a diplomatic exercise that needs to be done. And for diplomatic exercise, you need to have willingness on both sides. And I see this rising willingness. And this makes me relatively optimistic that we can find solutions when it comes to guarantees for no more objections. This council conclusion is describing an EU issue. The bilateral issues need to be solved by the countries themselves. Bilaterally, they shall not play a role in future EU negotiations. We all, and I'm an Austrian citizen, and we had a lot of bilateral issues, you can imagine, to solve in the last 70, 80 years. It takes time. Also, history takes time, and we should also not link any political decisions to these questions. Can there be absolute guarantees that there will be no more requests from the side of European Union? This is impossible for the Commission to do because it's a long process of negotiations, and it might be at a certain moment that reforms that are not happening on the ground might lead to some question marks. But what I see today is a huge window of opportunity. Not a single member state is blocking the accession progress for the region and also for North Macedonia beyond this question of a constitutional amendment. There's a lot of support. There's a clarity today in the European Union that I haven't seen before, that in terms of security, it's our common security that we need to stand up for. And this creates a new unity, but also a new understanding that enlargement of the Balkans is something that is important for the region, yes, but as much as it is important for the region, it is important for the European Union as such. So this is not a one-way road, but it's a road that shall serve both sides and is important for both sides.
Господине Вајц, и бугарската председателка Јотова и премиерот Мицкоски се сретнаа со председателот на Европскиот совет, господинот Кошта, во Минхен пред една-две недели. И имаше една интересна, индикативна изјава од бугарската председателка која се однесуваше на потребата да се најде некаква варијанта, при што таа го спомена јуни како рок, мислејќи на самитот ЕУ Западен Балкан. Дали вие лично сте запознаени со конкретна иницијатива за пробив до јуни?
I'm not involved into Mr. Costa's direct planning, but I can confirm that I have also held talks in Skopje, but also here in Brussels, that point into a direction of a possible solution. That's what I meant. There's a lot of constructive forces here on the Union side, but also on the Bulgarian side, but also on the North Macedonian side, that are trying to find a way out of this deadlock. And this is because we all understand that we need to move on, and we need to move on for societal issues, cultural issues, but also very much for security issues. And this is urgent, and it has a great importance for us, and it's very high up on the priority list, also of the Commission, also of the Council, and so I can confirm there's a lot of people working on finding a solution. Yes.
Ги спомнавте реформите. Може ли да бидете поконкретни? Кои според вас се клучните реформски чекори што Македонија треба да ги преземе во блиска иднина?
The next steps are very closely related to the so-called reform agenda of the growth plan, and it's been basically rule of law. So independent of justice, transparency when it comes to allocation of jobs. So further steps when it comes to rule of law, fight against corruption, closer cooperation. There's a list, and it's a public list of reform demands that are linked to the growth plan. And unfortunately, in the last year, due to a lot of election campaigning happening, not much reform steps were happening in the Soprania and by the government. So now I think is the year of reforms, and I must say I was also informed that there is quite some activity unfolding also in the government. There have been meetings between ambassadors and ministers to see where to take the next steps, because there's also an understanding in the North Macedonian government that it would be a pity to lose the support of close to 50 million euros. That money would go to neighboring countries. I'm sure neighboring countries wouldn't mind, but I'm still advocating and trying my best to motivate also the government and the different ministries to deliver on what we have agreed upon together, so we can channel this money into North Macedonia and Skopje, because I think it's very important to do so. So I really hope government can deliver. But I see also there are positive signals, and I see that work is started. It is very good that Prime Minister Mickoski has ruled out elections this year. That gives room to work, that gives room to govern, and so I'm slightly optimistic that we will manage until June.
И моето последно прашање, премиерот Мицкоски спомна дискусии во Брисел и меѓу земјите членки на ЕУ за забрзано пристапување на Украина, потенцијално дури и до 2027 година, заедно со Црна Гора, Албанија, можеби и Северна Македонија, иако не и за полноправно членство. Според вас, дали ваквото сценарио е остварливо и реално?
Well, if there is any change in the methodology, and if there's any, let's say, fast-track procedure, which is discussed, there is discussions about that, because we need to find ways to end this war of Putin's Russia against Ukraine. We need to find ways to deliver security guarantees to Ukraine, and yes, there are negotiations that have also included questions of European integration. But if there is a change in the methodology, then there will be a change for all countries, not just for Ukraine. And if there is a possibility to speed up the process, this will be possible for all countries. But what is for sure a basic requirement is the so-called EBAR, the interim benchmark on rule of law. So the rule of law standards need to be on a level that is acceptable for our common European Union, because this is the basis on which we work together. This is the basis on how our market functions. This is the basis how businesses can move from one country to another, or workers can move from one country to another. So this will be for sure the basic requirement for any possibility. But again, it is negotiations behind closed doors. The global situation, geopolitical situation is very volatile. So we shouldn't, I think, speculate too much about this date or that date, or will it be in this or that negotiation paper? Will there be a peace agreement as such or not? I'm still not sure, or let me be more clear. I have my doubts that Putin is interested in peace anyhow. So there's a lot of speculation around, but what it shows is that European politicians, heads of state, understand that we need to deliver now, we need to move on now, and there's no more room for nitty-gritty blockades. This is a general understanding of member states, and there's a common interest, and this is also shown by this debate or partly speculations.
Ви благодарам за овој разговор.
Thank you too, and thanks for having me.